That guy called Plato, who claimed that all of our perceptions are shadows on a cave wall. And it's very easy to show that they are like shadows, they're illusory. If you look at a bunch of birds, for example, flying in the sky in a flock formation, and if you zoom out really far from them, they look like a giant ball. They look like a solid object. And all of our perceptions work in a similar way. If you look at a bunch of atoms under a microscope, you can see they're all these separate things, these separate shapes, and as you zoom out from them, they then appear like these solid objects with no gaps between them or anything. Or another example is cells. If you look at cells under a microscope and then you zoom out from them, the cells start appearing like our skin, and the cells just become imperceptible to us, you see. So in this way, all of our perceptions are just appearances of underlying substances. Do you understand the argument that's being made there? It's like, for example, you have a bunch of pixels on the screen of a virtual reality headset. And when you zoom out from the pixels begin to appear as different virtual objects, like different chairs and objects in the virtual reality world, you see. So in this way, underlying substances appear as perceptions. So you can see our perceptions are not an objective reality at all, they're just appearances of underlying substances. You see. And it's proven further by the fact that every creature has radically different perceptions to each other. How a fly sees the world is radically different to how a snake sees the world. So who has the correct perception? The correct answer is none of them do. The correct answer is that their brains are configured differently. That's why they perceive the world differently. It's just like if you have VR headsets and you configure them differently, how the players perceive the world through their VR headsets differs from each other. There is no objective perception of the virtual reality. The VR headset determines that. And it's just like that with our perceptions. There is no objective perception of perception. The brain determines that. Even from human to human, perceptions differ from one another. There is no one correct objective perception, you see. It doesn't exist. So what we're saying is that perception is a product of the brain, specifically as Alcoa is providing good evidence for via experiments. The quantum effects going on in the subtler levels of the brain, which then give rise to classical effects, which then give rise to our perceptions, you see. It's not, perception doesn't just operate at the classical level, it operates at the quantum level also. That's the point I'm making. So it's quantum effects working with these classical effects in the brain that gives you your perception. In other words, the brain, from the quantum level up, is processing quantum information, and then it's processing that into your perceptions. And if you were born with a snake's brain, or a fly's brain, or an alien's brain, you would perceive the world totally different, because your brain is processing that that quantum information differently, and it's processing it into perceptions differently, you see. Okay, so our perceptions are completely subjective, they're illusory, they're a zoomed out appearance of underlying substances. You can change your perception just by altering your visual cortex, you know. But you may say, okay, but the underlying substratum, the quantum information, that's real. It's just appearing in different ways, via the brain's processing it. Fair enough, but what is the quantum information, you see? We don't really know what it is. You can, cells are an appearance of atoms, right? You got a bunch of atoms, molecules, you zoom out from them, you keep zooming out from them, they appear as cells. The atoms themselves are appearances of the underlying quantum waves, right? Atoms are collapsed quantum waves. In this sense, they are the appearance of the underlying substance, which is the quantum waves, quantum fields, whatever you wish to call it. What is that? We don't really know. I mean, we know it exists from mathematical formulae and experiments and stuff, but you can't really say what it is, and you can't put your foot down and say it ends there, and there's no underlying substance to the quantum fields or the quantum waves. You can't put your foot down and say it ends there just because we haven't perceived anything subtler. We haven't perceived an underlying substance for those quantum waves. You can't do that because physicalists did the same thing with atoms, right? They said atoms alone exist and there's nothing subtler than atoms, until it turned out there was. And when you look at these quantum effects, there's a lot of evidence that it's related to mind. Like there just is experimental evidence. Like if you ask AI, any AI engine, recent experiments 2025, 2026, 2024 that support OR, it'll give you a big list. There's quite a lot of evidence for this now. And OR is saying that there's quantum effects going on in the brain, which there is. There's plenty of good experiments for that. It's no good saying it's too warm, wet, and noisy. That's just disproven. Those quantum effects are correlated with consciousness. So anesthesia inhibits the quantum effects going on in microtubules, and that affects your consciousness, you see. It's one example. So there's something deeper about consciousness than neuronal activity. There's something quantum about it. So you see, the quantum realm and consciousness are related to each other. It's just undeniable. And that's why when you look at quantum effects, they correlate with all the what we call woo-woo stuff, like quantum tunneling and superimposition. And then when you read about post-death experiences or people who take the DMT or people who die and then are resuscitated, they talk about like traveling at speed through tunnels and being in a higher dimension and stuff like that. And all these weird things they report, like superimposition, and that's why New Agey people always keep yapping on about quantum effects related to consciousness, because they've basically taken a bunch of drugs or they've died and been resuscitated or something, and they've had those experiences of the higher dimensions, the world outside the virtual reality. And they know from those experiences that quantum effects and consciousness are related to each other. They've ascended outside the cave, to use Plato's metaphor. And what they've found is that that higher dimension that they've experienced is composed completely of mind. They exist there without a physical body, without any physical matter being present. It's all composed of intelligence. It's all composed of what is called nous. That's why the ancient Greeks called that higher dimension the cosmos noetos, which means the noetic cosmos, or the noetic world, the noetic order. It's composed of the same substance nous is composed of. That's why when you're disembodied there, you're just this disembodied intelligence ideating, and there's no physical time, there's no physical space. It's hyperbolic, non-Euclidean space, quantum. These are the experiences, and the experiences reveal that mind is fundamental, and what we call the physical universe is really just mind. All that exists is mind. There is no such thing as physical matter. What you call quantum waves and atoms and tables and chairs are all ultimately just composed of mind. The implications for this are massive, because now you will want to invoke those beings who exist in the higher dimension, the noetic world, the world outside this virtual reality, if you wish to use that metaphor. You will wish to telepathically invoke them, to communicate with them, to sacrifice to them, to receive their charis, their grace. And then those noetic beings, what we call daimons, these interdimensional beings, these gods, lower manifestations of our gods, they will radiate you with charis. They will radiate your intelligence with charis, with grace, and they will enlighten you. And as a result of that enlightenment, you reject the soullessness of modernity. The soullessness of modernity arises because we do not have the charis of the gods. We don't have the grace of the gods. That is the cause of the soullessness of modernity. So when you look at the Soviet Union, for example, and how everyone is living in these concrete slab blocks and everything's grey and there's no culture, that's because they're not invoking the gods and they're not receiving their charis, their grace. Same thing with modern places like Manchester in the UK or London. The people are not invoking the gods and they're not receiving their charis, their grace, because they're not idealists, they're physicalists. They don't think there's anything outside of the illusion that is our physical perception. And they think physical matter is fundamentally what exists for physicalists, even though they don't really know what physical matter even is, you see. But I'm saying once you adopt the idealist position, you stop being a neo-Marxist deconstructionist, all this lunacy in the West with wokeism. The neo-Marxist deconstructionism, you just give up on it all. You start invoking gods. You start rejecting modernity. You start wanting to rebuild bathhouses and temples to the gods with Corinthian columns. You start wanting to learn Latin and Greek. You reject the soullessness of modernism, in other words. All of this comes as a result of the idealism, as a result of receiving the charis, the grace of the gods. And if you shut your eyes to the charis, the grace of the gods, and believe only physical matter exists, the result is the soullessness of modernism. And we basically just become like animals, pretty much. But the implications of idealism are very big on our society. Idealism goes hand in hand with an anti-modernist agenda, you see. Whereas the neo-Marxism goes hand in hand with atheist deconstructionism, atheist neo-Marxist deconstructionism. You must have noticed this, all the neo-Marxist deconstructionists, or the vast majority of them, the physicalist atheists, and the idealists, the vast majority of them are traditionalists who want to revive traditional architecture and stuff. You must have noticed this. So you see, the two worldviews deeply influence how we view society. The physicalist materialism just leads to nihilism and soullessness and modernism. I don't know why anyone would support it, other than the fact they're spiritually blind and can't conceive of anything existing beyond the physical world. They're like the player in the virtual reality headset who is convinced that the virtual reality alone exists and there's nothing outside of it. That's pretty much what they're like. They acknowledge that all of our perceptions are an illusion, and they're completely subjective, and we don't really know what physical matter even is. But then for some reason they completely shut their eyes to any possibility of anything existing outside of it or beyond matter. And all the evidence for Orko, that is linking quantum effects to consciousness, and the reports of people who die and resuscitated, they just wave it away and say, it's just a hallucination, whatever. They're offering conclusions about reality that seem counterintuitive, that it just results in just animalism. Like when you go to Manchester and like these modernist places, like it's just grey concrete blocks, soullessness. There's no culture, there's no gods, there's no anything. It's terrible. Whereas the idealism results in civilization and culture and purpose, and it's based on the spiritual wisdom of the enlightened sages, like the Taoist sages in China, like the rishis, like Yajnavalkya, like the European ancient sages like Melissos of Samos and Parmenides and Heraclitus and Plato and so on. They're all idealists. When you read their writings, all the enlightened sages of all the ancient pagan cultures are all idealists, all of them. They all think mind is primary and fundamental, because they pierced outside the quote-unquote matrix. They received that higher vision, that theoria. They bestowed their blessings upon humanity with that idealism. So we follow the teachings of the enlightened sages. We don't follow the teachings of the soullessness of soulless modernity, you see, which is what neo-Marxism is based on, and just Marxism in general. We don't support it. It's soulless, and it's based on spiritual blindness. So are the exoteric religions, by the way, like Christianity, Islam, the religions that aren't based on the wisdom of the enlightened sages, but are just based on the creeds and the belief in the true historical events that were formulated by grifters like Saul of Tarsus and the Jews who wrote the Gospels, you see. They're not idealists. They reject idealism as heresy because they're exoteric religions that are based on belief in the true historical events.